Galactic Empire hunted a woman for sport. They didn't know she led humanity's deadliest squad. The air was thick with the scent of burning foliage. The twin moons of Vorder 6 cast an eerie glow over the dense jungle, painting shadows that stretched and twisted like specters. The hunt had begun. Captain Rhea Voss crouched low in the underbrush, her breath slow and measured. Her body, honed by a decade of war, remained motionless despite the primal urge to run. A lesser soldier would have panicked, would have given in to the fear that came with knowing they were being hunted for sport. Not her. She tightened her grip on the crude blade she had fashioned from a fallen beast's tusk. It wasn't much, but it would do until she could get her hands on something better. A shiver of rage passed through her as she recalled how she had ended up here. The Zarkesh Imperium, one of the dominant factions of the Galactic Council, had captured her ship on the edge of human space. They had scanned her, mocked her, and deemed her worthy prey. They stripped her of her weapons, dropped her onto this jungle moon, and unleashed their finest warriors. A hunt. They thought she was just another human. Another frail creature meant to be chased down, toyed with, and slaughtered for the amusement of the Imperium's aristocrats. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Rhea Voss wasn't just any human. She was the commander of Omega Squad, the most lethal Black Ops unit in the Terran Defense Force. Her squad specialized in asymmetric warfare, turning overwhelming odds into target-rich environments. She had orchestrated the downfall of warlords, dismantled entire planetary regimes, and outmaneuvered fleets with nothing but cunning and audacity. And now the hunters would become the hunted. A flicker of movement in the trees snapped her focus forward. The Zarkesh were closing in. Their exosuits made them nearly invisible in the jungle's thick shadows, but Rhea knew their tactics. Their arrogance made them predictable. They would move in a loose formation, pressing their prey into a kill box where the alpha would take the final shot. Amateurs. Rhea pressed her palm to the damp earth, feeling the vibrations of their movement. 5 hunters. Possibly 6. Armed with plasma lances and energy nets. She exhaled slowly. Time to remind them that humans didn't just survive. They adapted. She moved with the silence of a ghost, her muscles coiling and releasing in perfect synchronization. She climbed a low-hanging branch and perched above the path where the hunters would pass. Seconds later, the first one stepped into view. He was massive, 7 feet tall, armored in black carapace plating, and carrying a rifle that could punch through tank armor. His helmet swiveled as he scanned the trees, oblivious to the death that loomed just above. Rhea dropped onto him like a thunderbolt. The tusk blade punched through the soft joint between his collar and helmet, severing his carotid artery in an instant. Blood gushed as his massive body crumpled beneath her. Before the others could react, she snatched his sidearm, rolled into the underbrush, and disappeared. Panic spread through the group. Targets engaged. One of them barked in their guttural language. She's armed. Formation tight. Too late. Rhea was already moving. She darted through the jungle like a wraith, her stolen weapon spitting blue plasma into the darkness. She didn't need to hit them, just scatter them. She heard one of them curse as he tripped over a root. Another shouted something about falling back to regroup. No, she wouldn't give them the chance. Rhea launched herself forward, slamming the second hunter's head against a tree with a sickening crack. His body spasmed, then fell limp. 2 down. The remaining 3 fired wildly, their shots igniting the jungle in flashes of neon fire. They were afraid now. The hunt had turned against them. She let them sweat. Let them breathe in the fear they had once fed to their prey. Then, in the silence between their frantic movements, she whispered through the darkness. You should have killed me when you had the chance. The third hunter spun toward the sound, just in time for Rhea to bury a plasma round into his skull. The fourth fired at her position, but she was already moving. She slid through the mud, twisting her body just as his energy net deployed. It missed her by inches, tangling in the undergrowth instead. She grabbed a fallen branch and launched it like a spear. It struck his throat, sending him staggering. A second shot from her stolen sidearm ended him. The last hunter bolted. He scrambled backward, slipping in the dirt, desperate to escape the nightmare that had once been his sport. Rhea stalked toward him, her weapon raised. The hunter, who had once towered over her, who had once laughed at her helplessness, was now nothing more than a cowering animal. Mercy, he rasped, his voice trembling. Rhea pressed the barrel of the plasma gun against his forehead. Humans don't show mercy to monsters. She pulled the trigger. The jungle fell silent. She exhaled slowly, standing amidst the bodies of her would-be executioners. The Imperium had underestimated humanity. They thought they were apex predators. They had never met Rhea Voss. She holstered the stolen weapon and turned her gaze to the sky, where a distant ship loomed, her captors watching from orbit, no doubt wondering why their hunt had gone quiet. She smirked. Let them come. Rhea Voss didn't waste time. The Imperium ship hovering above would have seen her slaughter their hunting party. They would be coming. And she would be ready. She scavenged what she could from the dead Zarkesh, an energy dagger, a few plasma charges and a combat visor. The visor activated with a hiss, its HUD flickering to life. She scanned the area. Infrared signatures, 2 incoming vessels. They weren't wasting time. Good, she thought. A deep hum filled the air, reverberating through the jungle canopy as 2 dropships descended. Their hulls gleamed under the twin moons, sleek and menacing. A red insignia burned across the side, Zarkesh death squads. These weren't aristocratic hunters. These were professional killers. They thought they were coming to clean up a mistake. They had no idea they were walking into a war. The drop assault. Twin beams of searing blue light lanced from the underbelly of each ship, illuminating the jungle below. A high-intensity scan. They were searching for movement. Rhea rolled under the thick roots of a fallen tree, pressing herself against the damp earth as the scanning beams swept past. Then came the drop pods. 4 heavy cryopods slammed into the ground like meteors, hissing as their armored casings burst open. Zarkesh shock troops emerged, 12 in total. Unlike the hunters before, these soldiers wore full-body exoarmor, black and red plating with reinforced energy shields. Their rifles hummed with lethal intent. 12 to 1. Almost fair. Rhea took a deep breath. Assess. Plan. Execute. She had no illusions about fighting them head-on. Her best weapons were the jungle, the darkness, and their own overconfidence. They moved in a tight formation, sweeping the area with pinpoint precision. Their leader barked orders in their guttural tongue. Spread out. Find the human. Kill on sight. Rhea moved before they did. She slid into the shadows, placing a plasma charge on the underside of a massive tree limb, then slipped away. The detonator hummed in her hand. She waited. 5, 4, 3. The first squad moved under the tree. Click. The explosion ripped through the jungle, sending flaming shards of bark and branches in every direction. 3 Zarkesh were thrown into the air like ragdolls, their armor useless against the force of nature itself. The others whirled, firing wildly into the trees. She was already gone. A figure lunged from the foliage, Rhea, and drove her stolen energy dagger into a soldier's throat. The blade hissed as it melted through his armor, severing his windpipe. She twisted, yanking his rifle from his grip, and fired 2 shots into another's chest. The soldier's shield flared once, then failed. He hit the ground. The Zarkesh panicked. She's here, one of them howled. Engage formation beta. Rhea vanished back into the jungle. She knew how they would react. Titan formation moved to thermal scans, cut off escape routes. She knew because she had trained soldiers to do the exact same thing. The jungle became a war zone. Plasma bolts burned through the trees, igniting patches of undergrowth. Rhea moved like a shadow, weaving through the chaos. She spotted another Zarkesh adjusting his visor, too slow. A single precise shot took him in the eye. 7 left. She sprinted toward a thick cluster of vines, snatching up a plasma grenade from one of the corpses as she ran. They were regrouping. Perfect. She lobbed the grenade into their midst. A deafening boom ripped through the jungle. A wave of superheated air slammed into Rhea's back as she dove behind a rock. Smoke. Silence. Then, screams. 3 more Zarkesh lay in smoldering heaps. One twitched, reaching for his weapon. Rhea stomped on his wrist and put a round through his skull. 4 left. The survivors had lost all composure. They fired blindly, their discipline broken. One tried to activate a comm beacon, probably calling for reinforcements. Rhea snapped up her stolen rifle and shot him in the head. 3 left. They ran. She let them. She tracked their footprints through the mud, following their ragged breathing. They were terrified now. The hunters, the killers, the rulers of the hunt, reduced to prey. She let them scramble through the jungle for another 100 meters before they realized the truth. She was leading them. Straight into a pit of razor vines. The first soldier shrieked as his leg was shredded to the bone. He struggled, but the more he moved, the deeper the vines cut. His comrade tried to pull him free, bad mistake. The second soldier's glove slipped, and the vines latched onto his exposed wrist, slicing through tendon and bone. The third soldier turned to run. Rhea dropped onto his back and drove her knife through the base of his skull. The other 2 begged for mercy. Rhea stood over them, her face emotionless. You didn't show mercy to the others you hunted, she said, her voice cold. She lifted her rifle. 2 shots. 2 corpses. The jungle fell silent. The war begins. Above her, the Imperium warship had seen everything. She could almost feel the shock radiating from the vessel as it hovered uncertainly. They hadn't planned for this. They had expected a sport. An easy kill. A trophy. Instead, they had lost 17 elite warriors to 1 human. They knew. They knew what was coming next. Rhea stepped into a clearing, wiping the blood from her visor. She stared up at the warship, her body silhouetted in the light of its engines. She activated the Zarkesh communicator she had pulled from one of the bodies. The warship answered instantly. Who are you? The commander demanded, his voice laced with unease. Rhea smiled. I am Rhea Voss, commander of Omega Squad. And you just declared war on humanity. The Zarkesh warship hovered above, its cannons trained on the jungle below. But for the first time in its blood-stained history it did not fire. They had expected a hunt. A helpless human woman scrambling for survival. Instead, 17 of their best lay dead, slaughtered by the very creature they sought to claim as a trophy. And now, that creature was speaking to them. I am Rhea Voss, she said, her voice sharp as a blade over the communicator. Commander of Omega Squad. And you just declared war on humanity. Silence. Then a cold, alien voice, unnerved, but laced with arrogance. You are a lone human. Your threats are meaningless. Rhea smirked. They still didn't get it. She reached down to the dead Zarkesh officer at her feet and pried a priority beacon from his belt. She flicked a switch and the device blinked to life. A distress signal. Not for help. For vengeance. The signal that doomed them. Miles above the jungle, deep in the void of space, a fleet stirred. Omega Squad wasn't just some unit. They were humanity's deadliest operatives, forged in the fires of war, feared even among their own kind. And when one of their own sent a distress call, they answered. At that very moment, the Zarkesh Imperium's warship detected an incoming anomaly. A distortion in spacetime. A ripple. Then reality tore open. A slipstream rupture. From the void, like predators emerging from the abyss, came the Dreadstars, Omega Squad's personal warships. 7 sleek black vessels, silent and merciless. Each one was armed with enough firepower to wipe a planet clean. The Zarkesh commander froze as his screens lit up with proximity alerts. This wasn't a patrol fleet. It wasn't a response team. It was an execution. And he knew exactly who they were. Omega Squad. The ship's bridge descended into chaos. Impossible, the Zarkesh captain roared. How did they arrive so fast? Unknown, sir, one of his officers stammered. They must have been nearby. We. Fire all cannons, the captain snarled. Destroy them. Battle in the stars. The Zarkesh vessel opened fire, spewing searing plasma bolts toward the incoming ships. The Dreadstars didn't even slow down. Omega Squad's fleet weaved through the onslaught with pinpoint precision, their hulls shifting to deflect the energy. They were moving in formation like a pack of wolves surrounding a wounded beast. And then they struck. From their underbellies, the Dreadstars launched pulse lances, cutting through the warship's shields like paper. The first volley hit the engines, sending the ship into a downward spiral. The Imperium vessel lurched, alarms blaring, its hull bleeding fire. The captain staggered, gripping his command chair. Send reinforcements. We need backup now. No answer. The communication lines were silent. Because while the Zarkesh were busy hunting Rhea, Omega Squad had already taken their fleet apart. One by one, the Imperium's reinforcements had been ambushed, crippled, destroyed. Now there was only this one ship left. And it was Rhea's. The death of a warship. Rhea watched the sky burn, the jungle below illuminated by the flames of the dying Zarkesh vessel. She pressed the comms to her ear. Aaron, she said. How's my ship? A familiar voice crackled to life. Voss, you owe me a drink. We had to gut through 3 carriers to get here. Remind me to buy you something expensive when this is over. She heard a chuckle. I'll hold you to that. Ready for pickup. Not yet. She had one last thing to do. Rhea turned her gaze back to the warship, now limping through the sky, struggling to stay airborne. Patch me through to their captain. Pause. Then a direct channel opened. Human, the Zarkesh captain growled. His voice was shaking. This is an act of war. Rhea tilted her head. No, she said. Hunting me for sport was an act of war. This is just consequences. She tapped her wrist pad. The final strike came from above. Omega Squad's lead Dreadstar released a kinetic rod, a single, massive projectile fired at near-light speeds. The Zarkesh warship never stood a chance. The rod punched through its hull, ripping it apart in a chain of violent explosions. Chunks of flaming debris rained down into the jungle, scattering like dying embers. The Imperium vessel, once a symbol of power, was reduced to a burning carcass. Rhea watched without remorse. Because this was justice. The message to the Imperium. As the wreckage smoldered, Rhea boarded her ship. The Iron Fang Omega Squad's flagship was waiting for her. The interior was sleek, lethal, a predator built for war. Her crew saluted as she entered the command deck. Aaron, her second-in-command, grinned. "So, do we send a nice, polite message to the Imperium? Let them know what happened?" Rhea smiled coldly. "Oh, they'll know." She tapped the controls, uploading a direct transmission to the Zarkesh Imperium's high command. The message was simple. A single, silent video feed. 17 dead Zarkesh hunters. A warship in flames. And Rhea Voss staring directly into the camera saying just 4 words. "Come try again, cowards." Then she cut the feed. Omega Squad's fleet turned, slipping back into the void, leaving only destruction in their wake. Far across the galaxy, in the throne halls of the Imperium, the message would be received. And for the first time in history, the Zarkesh would feel fear. The Zarkesh Imperium was silent. For the first time in its long war-ravaged history, the rulers of the galaxy's most feared empire had nothing to say. Not when their warships burned in orbit. Not when their elite hunters lay dead in the dirt. And certainly not when Rhea Voss, the woman they had foolishly chosen as their prey, had sent them an open invitation to die. But silence was not surrender. It was rage. It was retribution. And the Imperium was about to make the most fatal mistake in its existence. It was going to come for Omega Squad. The Imperium's response. Rhea and her squad were already moving. The Iron Fang had barely left the system when their sensors picked up a ripple in space-time. Not a single warship, not even a fleet, but an entire battle group. "Well, that didn't take long," Aaron muttered from the pilot's seat. His fingers danced over the controls, scanning the incoming armada. 6 destroyers, 2 dreadnoughts, 1 carrier, and a goddamn planetary siege ship. Rhea exhaled through her nose. "They're bringing a siege ship for 7 people?" she said. "Technically, we're very dangerous people," Aaron reminded her. A second later, the ship's comms flared to life. A guttural alien voice, deep, cruel, and hungry for vengeance. "Rhea Voss. Omega Squad. You have defied the Zarkesh Imperium. You will surrender now or we will wipe your species from the stars." Aaron scoffed. "That's cute. They think we're afraid of them." Rhea smiled. "Patch me through," she ordered. A click. A moment of dead air. Then she spoke. "To the esteemed High Warlord Karza of the Zarkesh Imperium," she said smoothly, her voice as sharp as a blade. "You should have stayed silent." The warlord growled. "You are surrounded, human. There is no escape." Rhea tilted her head. "Escape?" she echoed. "Who said anything about escaping?" She leaned forward, her next words dripping with venom. "You're the ones who should be running." Then she cut the feed. Omega Squad unleashed. The Iron Fang dove into action, a predator among prey. The Zarkesh fleet opened fire, blinding plasma lances carving through the void, seeking to burn Omega Squad from existence. But they were too slow. Too predictable. Because humanity didn't fight like the Zarkesh. It fought harder. Smarter. Dirtier. Releasing javelins, Aaron called out. The Iron Fang's underbelly split open, launching 24 microcruisers, fast, unmanned drones, each one packed with enough explosives to turn a destroyer inside out. The Zarkesh ships tried to intercept. They failed. The javelins tore into their ranks, slipping between their defenses before detonating in blinding bursts of white-hot annihilation. One destroyer went instantly dark, its bridge severed in an instant. Another tore apart at the seams, atmosphere venting as its crew screamed into the void. But the Imperium wasn't done. Siege ship is locking its primary cannon. Aaron warned. Rhea grinned. Let them. The siege ship's last mistake. The Zarkesh siege ship was a behemoth, 3 miles long, its hull bristling with weaponry. But it wasn't just here to fight. It was here to eradicate. Its main cannon, a graviton warlance, was meant to pulverize entire cities. And right now, it was aiming directly at the Iron Fang. Target locked, a Zarkesh officer snarled. Firing in 5, 4, 3. A single flicker appeared on their scanners. Just a blip. Nothing more than a shadow, moving at impossible speeds, slipping between the folds of space like a ghost. They barely had time to process it. Then, it hit them. Omega-7. One of humanity's Black Ops stealth vessels. A ship designed to do one thing. Kill capital ships. It burst from the void like a reaper, ramming through the siege ship's main cannon housing in a violent explosion of torn metal and ruptured hull plating. The entire cannon assembly collapsed in on itself, detonating like a dying star. For a brief, brilliant moment, the Zarkesh siege ship glowed from the inside. Then it was gone. Just like that. The end of the hunt. Rhea watched the remains drift through space, her expression unreadable. The once mighty Zarkesh fleet was shattered. Omega Squad had won. And the Imperium knew it. A final transmission crackled through the comms. The Zarkesh warlord's voice was filled with hate. This is not over, human, he rasped. We will return. We will bring our full armada and your kind will burn. Rhea let out a slow, amused breath. You don't get it, she said softly. She leaned in, her voice turning to steel. This wasn't a battle, she said. This was a warning. She let the silence stretch. Try this again, she said finally, cold as death itself. And humanity will wipe you from history. Then she cut the feed. Legends are written in blood. Omega Squad disappeared back into the void, leaving only wreckage and whispered horror in their wake. Across the galaxy the story spread. The Zarkesh Imperium had hunted a human for sport. And in return humanity had ripped them apart. Some called it vengeance. Some called it justice. But those who truly understood knew the truth. This was a warning. And from that day forward, the Zarkesh Imperium learned a lesson written in blood and fire. Humanity was not prey. It was the apex predator. And it never, ever forgave. The end.